morning, and good morning. It's welcome to First Parish Unitarian Universalist of Chelmsford. We're a covenantal community gathered for worship, mutual care, faith formation through spiritual learning and ethical discernment, and in service to a common good. I'd like to extend a special welcome to anyone visiting us for the first time, whether you are here in the sanctuary or coming to us from home. We're so glad that you joined us today. You can learn more about our congregation or contact us via our website, uuchelmsford.org, or email dre@uuchelmsford.org. I'm Reverend Ellen Spiro. I'm leading the service today with Steve Zaki, our music director, Diana Cohane, who will be offering our chalice lighting and leading us in our covenant this morning. Caroline Snow is our greeter. Aggie Brennan and Doug Snow are our ushers. And Dave Caffeine is running our live stream tech. Hi, Dave, in the balcony. Our worship services are multi-platform, so we have people attending in the sanctuary and from home. If you're attending from home, Bill Newhart is our online chat host. And if you wish to join the online chat, you need to join the worship service via our YouTube link option on our website and be logged into your Google account. If you are attending in the sanctuary, be aware that you are on TV and it is being recorded to post later in our website, and Aggie and Doug can help you find seating that is not within view of the camera if you wish. However you are joining us this morning, though, I am glad that you are here. And I'd like us to take a moment to say hello to each other here and at home, and so we can wave. We can turn around and wave and say hello, and you can wave back. We're all in this together, wherever we happen to be. I have a couple of brief announcements. The first is from our Canvas team, who is grateful and would like to thank the 30 First Parish members and friends who in the first 5 days of our stewardship drive have taken a moment to consider what for them is a fair and generous share and submitted their pledges. And I say thank you as well. From our auction team, we have many wonderful donations for our online auction coming up on April 2nd, and we can still use more to make a well-rounded offering for this important church fundraiser. Can you help? See Brenda Rogers at Coffee Hour, this is Brenda here, or email her at brogers1926@hotmail.com, or you can also speak to Sue or Barry Jefferson. We will have a social hour online after the service, hosted today by Terry Rybowski, and we'll provide the Zoom link at the end of the service for that. We also have opened the vestry for people to gather to socialize after the service, although we're not serving food or beverages yet. But let us worship together. Steve.
Good morning, and happy almost spring, right? About an hour and a half away from spring. Okay. My name is Diana Cohane. As you might know, I am the team leader for Chelmsford Faith in Action. This team formed last fall in response to the news that hundreds of Afghan evacuees were being brought to New England by the U.S. government. These evacuees had been living on U.S. military bases. The government contracted with the International Institute of New England, or IINE, to settle them in Boston, Lowell, and Manchester areas. Chelmsford Faith in Action is composed of members of First Parish, Temple Shalom, and Harbor of Hope, as well as several individuals who are not affiliated with a church or with one of these three churches. Together, we have set up 18 apartments for arriving families, or over 100 Afghan evacuees. We've done grocery shopping, sorted and delivered groceries to families who cannot work yet because they don't have a taxpayer ID. We've gathered household good donations from our communities and from here at First Parish. We've helped organize donations at IINE's storage facility and headquarters and more. We collected over $1,000 from within the team members to purchase gift cards to a halal market in Lowell. And First Parish donated $500 as a Faith in Action grant to IINE for this work. A few members of First Parish have even pretty much adopted a family and now bring them shopping to their ESL classes and have had tea with them. I am sure my fellow team members would agree that it has been fun getting to know others on our team and at IINE. The work has felt meaningful, and that the Afghans we have met and interacted with have been so grateful. I think about how different it feels to be doing this work as part of a team rather than as an individual. I am hoping that Chelmsford Faith in Action will soon offer a new program for these families where members of our team will provide a ride to First Parish for participating Afghans. Once here, they will cook a meal or some meals together. The cooking is just the byproduct, providing this social opportunity for Afghans who might otherwise be sitting alone in their Lowell apartments, and providing an opportunity for our team members to interact with, learn from, and help our fellow human beings who had to leave their country in order to stay alive is my real goal. I remember how helpless I felt last August as the tragedy unfolded in Afghanistan. What could I do except send money to NGOs in the area? That's why I jumped at the opportunity to get involved when Reverend Ellen sent along the request for help from IINE. And I'm so glad I did. There is an African proverb that keeps coming to mind when I reflect on the impact that the Chelmsford Faith in Action team is having. If you want to get somewhere fast, walk by yourself. If you want to get somewhere far, walk with others. Together we have accomplished so much. We have another wave of Afghan evacuees coming next month, and I wonder if IINE will soon be asking for help resettling Ukrainian refugees. If you would like to join our team, please let me know. There is much work to be done, and we have fun doing it. I light the chalice, or I ask Ellen to light the chalice today, for all the work for human dignity, justice, and compassion that we can accomplish when we work together. Thank you, Ellen. Okay, and now I'm also doing the covenant. I'm going to do it a little differently. I don't know, some of you have come up here and done it in Spanish beautifully, but I start to trip over my tongue when I say more than one or two sentences in Spanish. So I'm going to do a line, and I also like to see what the translation is from the English version to the Spanish version. So I'm going to read one sentence at a time in English and then in Spanish. So bear with me. We, the members of First Parish, covenant together to sustain and strengthen our beloved community by nosotros, los miembros de la primera parroquia de Chelmsford, convenimos juntos a sostener y fortalecer nuestra amada comunidad and honoring and celebrating the spirit of life, honrando y celebrando el espíritu de la vida, nurturing all souls in our search for truth and the sacred, nutriendo toda almas en búsqueda de la verdad y la sagrado, caring and being present to one another in our joys and sorrows. Cuidar y estar presentes al uno y otro en nuestras alegrías y tristezas, bearing witness through service to justice and peace, dar testimonio mediante servicio a la justicia y paz, and being good stewards of our congregation, our heritage, our Unitarian Universalist principles, and our earth, y ser buenos cuidadores de nuestra congregación, nuestra herencia, nuestros principios unitarios, universalistas, y la tierra. Thank you, guys. You did well.
There you go. Thank you, Diana. In order for us to live into our covenant is the work of bringing together our time and our talent and our treasure, trusting that what we are able to do together, as Diana said, as a team, is greater than what any of us could do on our own. We're not passing the plate for an offertory at this time, but you can donate online, or if you want to on your way out, the plate is up front. But in the meantime, I invite us to take this time to pause in gratitude for all the gifts that we have and all that we share. Thank you. Our ancient reading this morning comes from the Bhagavad Gita, which translated from the Sanskrit is Song of the Blessed One. And it's one of the Hindu scriptures. And this is translated by Stephen Mitchell. And the Bhagavad Gita tells the story of the warrior prince Arjuna, who's accompanied into battle by the god Krishna, disguised as Arjuna's charioteer. And Arjuna has a crisis of conscience. And the Bhagavad Gita is the story of Krishna teaching him the yogas, or spiritual paths of the Hindu tradition: action, wisdom, renunciation, and meditation. And just as a note, this was a favorite text of Emerson and Thoreau, if there's a Unitarian connection. So anyway, this is the first, from the very beginning, where Arjuna has his crisis. He is standing, getting ready to go into battle. Arjuna saw them standing there, fathers, grandfathers, teachers, uncles, sons, grandsons, fathers-in-law, and friends, kinsmen on both sides, each arrayed against each other. In despair, overwhelmed by pity, he said, "As I see my own kinsmen gathered here, eager to fight, my legs weaken, my mouth dries, my body trembles. My hair stands on end, my skin burns. The bow Gandhava drops from my hand. I am beside myself. My mind reels. I see evil omens, Krishna. No good can come from killing my own kinsmen in battle. I have no desire for victory or for the pleasures of kingship. What good is kingship or happiness or life itself when those for whose sake we desire them, teachers, fathers, sons, grandfathers, uncles, fathers-in-law, grandsons, brothers-in-law, and other kinsmen, stand here in battle ranks, ready to give up their fortunes and their lives. Though they want to kill me, I have no desire to kill them, not even for the kingship of 3 worlds, let alone that of the earth. What joy would we have in killing Dhritarashtra's men? Evil will cling to us if we kill them, even if they are the aggressors. And it would be unworthy of us to kill our own kinsmen. How could we be happy if we did? Because their minds are overpowered by greed, they see no harm in destroying the family, no crime in treachery to friends. But we should know better, Krishna. Having spoken these words, Arjuna sank down into the chariot and dropped his arrows and bow, his mind heavy with grief. Our modern reading this morning is an excerpt from War is Evil by Diana Butler Bass from her weekly blog, The Cottage. This is March 11th, 2022. What is happening in Ukraine is a sin. It is evil. War is a sin. War is evil. And yet it continues. War is one of the rare things in human history that doesn't vary. It is what humans do. Since before recorded time, through the centuries, now. You might say that our inhumanity to others is a sobering characteristic of being human. That is depressing and painfully true. Those of us who are shaped by faith traditions and commitments know that something else is painfully true. We'd like to believe that religion makes this inhumanity better. We preach good sermons about this, theologize endlessly on love of neighbor and peace, yet we know differently. While our atheist friends shout it accusingly from the rooftops and across the internet, we whisper reality among ourselves. Religion is complicit in this endless cycle of evil, this continued escalation of ever more immoral and vile forms of war and destruction. World War I was called the war to end all wars. It didn't. After World War II and the revelation of the Holocaust, world leaders proclaimed never again. Yet wars and genocides have continued since, all around the world, and millions have died, while many others have been wounded in body and spirit and displaced. And here we are with Russia's invasion of Ukraine, another conflict that threatens to become something much bigger, bringing us to the precipice of a greater war, something we imagined we would not see again after the Berlin Wall fell and the Cold War ended. I'm more than worried. I'm disheartened. At times, I'm downright scared. It's like watching a giant worldwide car crash in slow motion. I know it's going to end with death and destruction and heartache, and yet I'm powerless to stop it. It's the worst kind of bearing witness, I know. Everywhere around me, I see people trying to do something to help and to show solidarity. I've received emails from the Unitarian Universalist Service Committee, members of First Parish, my yoga studio, and others with opportunities to donate money or medical supplies. I saw a Ukrainian flag flying at the gas station where I filled up my tank, and I imagine the same thing is happening on social media, which I confess I studiously avoid. I even saw a guy out running in Ukrainian flag running shorts. Something in us, in many of us, knows that this is wrong, immoral, and evil, and it needs to stop. We might not think of Russia's invasion of Ukraine as being a religious war, but it is, as it is playing out a deep conflict in the Eastern Orthodox Church about authority. As Butler Bass describes it, in certain ways, the quarrel in Orthodoxy is an internal polity argument. Which Orthodox churches should have authority over other Orthodox churches? Is the Patriarch of Moscow the spiritual leader of the Ukrainian Orthodox Church in Kyiv? Or does the Kyiv Church stand as an ordered community without Moscow? Is the Patriarch of Moscow more important than other Orthodox patriarchs? Which Orthodox patriarch has authority over growing churches in Africa? There is much tension in global orthodoxy right now about who is in charge of what and who holds authority over whom. But this war reveals something other than ancient polity arguments and theological rivalries. The religious aspects of this war seem to reveal that there are two differing impulses of religious nationalism. The Russian one, which is fundamentally a hierarchical structure of domination. There's not much question about this. The Moscow Patriarch said so. And the Ukrainian one, which, although it retains a hierarchical priesthood, appears to be moving toward a more open, potentially more inclusive one, a church that is national, but at least in theory, tolerant and more democratic. Eastern Orthodox Christianity is woven deep into the culture and identity of both Russians and Ukrainians. It's something that they hold in common, so it seems odd that religion would be at the heart of the conflict, that indeed Putin and the Patriarch of Moscow would be in cahoots in justifying this invasion. In a way, it's fratricide, the murder of one's own siblings. Shouldn't the Patriarch of Moscow be joining other religious leaders in the world in condemning this? But as Butler Bass points out, this particular conflict is yet another example of the kind that has dogged all religions and spiritual traditions through the millennia. The conflict between faith that justifies war and faith that longs for peace. One that justifies hierarchy and conquest, the other that calls for love or unity. What Butler Bass calls the conflict between structures of religiously justified domination and structures of religiously inspired human communion or friendship. She writes, the domination structure focuses on control and submission, the communion structure on liberation and friendship. The communion structure is the one taught and modeled by Jesus. The domination structure of what became Christendom was a betrayal of Jesus himself. But the struggle isn't just in Ukraine, and it isn't exclusively Christian. These skirmishes are taking place in every single major religion, and more than a few minor ones too, on the planet right now. In some places, the struggle has provoked violence and war. In other places, it's mostly a cold war. Occasionally, it seems a mere family squabble. Domination or communion? That is the structural crisis that animates most everything, most everywhere in religion right now. And it is the only global frame that makes sense of it all. Open any ancient scripture and you'll find a version of this conflict. The Bible, the Quran, the Bhagavad Gita, the Iliad, the myths and hero stories of cultures and spiritual traditions around the world through time. Is war the greatest glory or the greatest evil? Gandhi was deeply inspired by the Bhagavad Gita for his religious commitment to nonviolence, and yet in the end, as Arjuna recognizes that he must fight a just war, the text has been used to justify war. The same thing happens in the Bible and the Quran and other sacred texts. In some places, God or the gods are invoked for the glory of war, while in others, they call us into human communion, to live according to the golden rule. The word religion comes from the Latin and Old French verb religare, to tie or to bind. Religion is about naming, lifting up, and giving expression to what we believe binds us, to what is most holy and sacred, what is worthy of our deepest commitments and loyalties, who we are at the core of our identities, what gives our lives meaning and purpose. Sometimes that commitment requires us to sacrifice and fight for what we believe is right, what we trust is worthy of our deepest commitments, our very lives. I've been attending an online course with Butler Bass and her colleague Tripp Fuller entitled Jesus Deconstructed. In the last episode, Butler Bass and Fuller talked about the fight between these forms of faith, between fundamentalist faith and a faith that is oriented towards openness, exploration, and learning from other traditions. They define fundamentalism as forms of faith that seek certainty, justify unquestioning authority and allegiance within cultural topics. Fundamentalism is hierarchical, literal, and dominant. But faith that is centered on human communion or sacred friendship embraces curiosity, hospitality, and, well, love as central to religious practice. So it seems to me that it's not religion per se that's the problem, but humanity. Religion and faith were created by us, human beings, and embodied by us, human beings. And they can call us to our best selves, or our worst. The Christian tradition cites the story of Adam and Eve partaking of the forbidden fruit on the tree of knowledge as the origin of human sin. I actually think it happens in the next chapter of Genesis, when Cain kills his brother Abel. Aware that Cain has murder on his mind, God confronts him. Why are you angry, and why has your countenance fallen? If you do well, will you not be accepted? And if you do not do well, sin is lurking at the door. Its desire is for you, but you must master it. Cain doesn't, and he kills his brother. And when God confronts him again after the murder, Cain responds, "Am I my brother's keeper?" And so the wrestling begins on how to answer that question. Thousands of years later, Jesus would answer it with the story of the Good Samaritan and the great commandment to love God and to love our neighbors as ourselves. An answer one could argue got him killed. A couple more thousand years more, we're still arguing about it. I am a grandchild of war, in that I grew up in the generation after my mother, grandmother, and great-grandmother survived World War II, and my grandfather and many other relatives did not. I'm also the mother of a soldier, and I know that my child did not enter the army because he loves war or fighting. He doesn't. He wanted to serve in a way that was meaningful, be part of something larger than himself. And I think also because serving with his fellow soldiers creates an incredible bond between them, because they rely on one another for their very lives. A kind of bond, a kind of that transcends boundaries, that transcends the boundaries of race and class, religion, even gender and sexual orientation when it's allowed. Chris Hedges, a former New York Times foreign correspondent who's now a Presbyterian minister, wrote a book called War is a Force That Gives Us Meaning, where he explored this very topic. War is a form of crisis, and while crises are chaotic and confusing, they can also clarify what matters most when we are called upon to fight for what we hold most dear. The bonds created under fire are unlike any other. Butler Bass maintains that war is evil and a sin. That is one of those rare things in human history that doesn't vary. It's what humans do. And we do it with more destructive and powerful weapons every generation. And while wars start because a group of people believe they are maintaining or preserving something they are totally justified in doing, it destroys so much more than it ever preserves. So much so that after a particularly bad war, everyone looks at each other and says, let's not do that again. And we try to figure out how to make sure we don't, until we do. I know that most Unitarian Universalists gave up the language of evil and sin a couple of generations ago, in part because we believe in the human capacity for goodness and progress, and in part because the language of evil and sin have been used to deny people, groups of people, their humanity. But with everything we have been through in the last few years, the rise of white nationalism, and autocracy, and facing the realities of systemic racism in our country and in our own Unitarian Universalist tradition, the growing fundamentalist takeover of local and state governments that are striving to literally erase the history of peoples of color and the existence of LGBTQIA+ people from education, from history, and from the culture of our country. And now witnessing the daily horrors of war in Ukraine, I find myself resonating with words like evil and sin to describe what is happening. Perhaps what is needed is a counter-testimony, a counter-definition to what constitutes sin. I understand sin as that which separates us from communion, from sacred friendship with one another, with the creation, and with what we name our source of being, the spirit of life and love. Sin is that which rips or destroys the religare, the sacred ties that bind us. I wish I could offer you something more definitive and useful, clear actions that we could take to stop the terrible things that are happening in Ukraine and elsewhere. But we don't have that kind of power. I can only offer what I trust as a Unitarian Universalist, renewing faith grounded in the spirit of human communion. I trust that love is the creative, transforming, and healing power in the universe, and that I am called to serve that love and bear witness to it where and how I can, even when that bearing witness requires me to name what is evil and sinful, as well as what is hopeful and life-giving. That I'm called to be part of a community, a communion of others who are likewise committed, and that we walk together in stewardship of that communion. That our survival as a species and our planet depends upon us doing the work of repair where and when we can, like Bill and Linda Newhart collecting supplies to send to Ukraine through a connection at Bill's work, or members of our First Parish community joining with a neighboring evangelical church and a Jewish synagogue to support families from a Muslim country racked by another war, to help them find a home here, as Diana shared with us this morning. It well may be that we will never end the realities of war and domination, that what is broken and cruel in our humanity can never be fully healed. But I want to be counted among those, the many who tried, who pray each day that the spirit of peace will be with all who mourn and all who are in need of comfort this day, who embody this prayer with the work of our hands and our hearts to create sacred human communion wherever we can. I'd like to close these words by the poet Rainier Marie Rilke, as translated by Anita Barrows and Joanna Macy, as a kind of prayer. All will come again into its strength, the fields undivided, the waters undammed, the trees towering and the walls built low, and in the valleys people as strong and varied as the land, and no churches where God is imprisoned and lamented like a trapped and wounded animal, the houses welcoming all who knock, and a sense of boundless offering in all relations and in you and me. No yearning for an afterlife, no looking beyond, no belittling of death, but only a longing for what belongs to us, and serving earth lest we remain unused. As part of our covenant, we pledge to be present to one another in our joys and sorrows. So I invite us wherever we are, to take a deep breath and center ourselves, to hold the joys and sorrows, spoken and unspoken, of our beloved community. Mickey O'Connor asked for thoughts and prayers for her daughter Linda, who underwent a successful surgery to heal an aneurysm. As of yesterday, she was still in recovery in the ICU. Garland Kemper and Rick Warner ask us to hold their son and his family who live in South Korea in our thoughts and prayers as they have come down with COVID. Their cases are relatively mild, but they're still sick. And because while the world feels heavy, there are still joys, Brian and Caroline Snow would like to share that they both have new jobs. Brian is now working at the Fuller Mental Health Facility in Boston, and Caroline is working for the Unitarian Universalist Association. And Aggie Brennan joyfully announces the birth of her grandson, Nico. He will be 3 months on Tuesday, and the family is overjoyed. So let's gather those in, those joys and sorrows. Moments of uncertainty and worry and fear for family close by and halfway around the world. And also for possibility and new beginnings and new life. On this morning where the creation promises us spring and flowers and a warmer sun. as we bear witness to the terrible and terrifying things that we human beings can do to one another, and also the ways that we engage in the work of repair and healing and hope. Spirit of life and love, help us hold this complicated mess. Where tears of sorrow and tears of joy are shed together, to water our souls and water this earth. Amen and blessed be.
I will give thanks unto thee, O Lord, with my whole heart. I will give thanks unto thee, O Lord, with my whole heart. In before the gods will I sing praise unto thee. In before the gods will I sing praise unto thee.
I send us forth with these words by Marcia Falk. Eternal wellspring of peace, may we be drenched with the longing for peace, that we may give ourselves over as the earth to the rain, to the dew, until peace overflows our lives as living waters overflow the seas. Amen and blessed be.